Welcome back to the cryptowrld channel, everyone. My name is Josh, and right now is a crucial time for Bitcoin and Ethereum. And in just a moment, I'll be explaining exactly what this means for Bitcoin and Ethereum. So definitely stick around. First of all, just giving you a quick update on what happened in the US stock market today. This right here is the Nasdaq 100 index on the daily time frame, and today we actually had quite a lot of green price action, a lot of bullish price action throughout the trading day, especially in the tech stocks. And as you can see right here, the Nasdaq 100 index has now pretty much hit the price target for this previous ascending triangle pattern that I covered quite a few weeks ago on this channel. And obviously, if you've been keeping up to date with my videos over the past 1 month or so, you would have been prepared for this bullish move before it even happened. Because down here at these much lower prices that we saw around a month ago, I was saying how it's very likely for markets to play out something similar to what we saw in the first quarter of this year, specifically around March. Now, keep in mind, what we saw in March just turned out to be a bear market rally. It was a temporary bullish phase in the market during a larger bearish phase in the market. And if you're measuring the size of that bullish move during March this year, that was around a 17 to 18% move in the Nasdaq 100 index during the larger move to the downside during the bear market. And if you compare that to the recent move that we've seen over the past 1 to 1.5 months, this recent move from swing low to swing high has been around a 20% move to the upside. So in terms of the size of this bullish move, it's actually pretty close to the size of the bullish move that we saw back in March. Once again, back in March, we saw around a 17 to 18% gain. And since the middle of June, we've seen around a 20% gain in the Nasdaq 100 index. And also, if you're looking at the daily RSI for the Nasdaq 100 index, we're nearly entering into overbought territories. And so what this means, technically speaking, we could be getting pretty close to some sort of turnaround again, especially if we end up getting bad inflation data in around a week from now, because we do have new CPI data coming out in around a week. And as I've already been mentioning for around 2 weeks now, that inflation data is already expected to be pretty good, as in it could potentially come in lower than last month, showing some sort of peak in inflation. So a lot of the market is currently expecting that. And based on those expectations, the futures market is pricing in a full-on Fed pivot towards the end of this year, entering into early 2023. And basically, if those expectations are fully correct, then we could have already hit a bottom, and we could be in for a larger recovery later this year, entering into 2023. But as I said, that is based on those expectations. And of course, expectations can be wrong from time to time. So for example, in the most bearish scenario possible, if inflation actually comes in worse than expected, and instead of reaching some sort of peak sometime soon, if inflation keeps getting worse and worse, and especially if it starts crossing above 10% in the US, for example, then in that case, that would further delay a Fed pivot, which means the futures markets would then have to price in all of that bearish news alongside the stock markets, because once again, the majority in the market are expecting inflation to have already hit some sort of ceiling. And so there's definitely a lot of forecasts and a lot of future probabilities relying on the CPI data that we get next week. And those numbers that get released next week would likely determine whether or not the rally will continue throughout the rest of August, or if we will see a turnaround sooner rather than later. But technically speaking, based on the charts alone, not based on fundamental factors, we're technically due to see some sort of turnaround or some sort of cool off, at least in the stock market, potentially within the next couple weeks or so. So that is just something to keep in mind moving forward. And the reason why I'm covering stocks, if you're new to the channel, is because the crypto market is heavily correlated to what the stock market is doing, especially on these major market movements. Because obviously for the majority of this year, the stock market and the crypto market have been more bearish than bullish. But obviously since around the middle of June, we've seen a rally in the stock market, the same as crypto, specifically Bitcoin and Ethereum. So that means that if the stock market turns around sometime soon, we could potentially see another turnaround in Bitcoin and Ethereum. And speaking of Bitcoin, getting into the Bitcoin part of this video, this right here is the 12-hour Bitcoin chart, and obviously we still have that active bearish divergence in play. If you want more information, check out my video that I posted 2 days ago now on the channel, because this 12-hour chart hasn't really changed over the past couple days. And looking at this 12-hour Bitcoin chart, the same thing can also be said. Nothing much has changed over the past 1 day especially, other than the fact that we've seen a bit more of a bounce from that level of support that I covered yesterday, coming in at around 22.7 to 22.8k, which is a Fibonacci level. So that is still the immediate level of support that I'm paying attention to for Bitcoin. And if we break below around 22.7k, then I'll be looking towards around 22.2k, which is this upward trending line of support. And also just keep in mind that throughout this uptrend that we've seen over the past 1.5 months approximately, we have seen some declining bullish momentum, especially as of recent. And technically speaking, that does mean that we could be due for a bit more of a cool off or some sort of turnaround for Bitcoin, potentially in a few weeks. But like I said just earlier, we also need to pay attention to other factors outside of the chart, such as inflation, because in only a week from now, we're getting new inflation numbers. But anyway, since not a lot has changed right here over the past 1 to 2 days on the 12-hour time frame, heading into the 4-hour Bitcoin chart, and what we could see right now at the time of recording this video is the Bitcoin price still in this retest phase. In fact, we're seeing a bit of a short-term rejection at the moment as of recording this video from the 5-day simple moving average. And this 5-day moving average is coming into play at around 23,500. So that is still the short-term level of resistance that I'm currently paying attention to. While the Bitcoin price is below this moving average, technically speaking, we haven't confirmed a bullish flip over just yet, because if the Bitcoin price ends up confirming a further rejection from that 5-day moving average, and if we revisit this low at around 22.8k to 22.7k, that short-term support I was just talking about, then in that case, that would put us in a similar situation to what we saw back here or what we saw back here, for example, which would obviously be a short-term bearish indicator. But with that being said, if you're looking at the price oscillators, starting off with the 4-hour Bitcoin RSI, we've obviously seen a move to the upside over the past 1 day, which is technically putting in a higher high, but we're yet to start forming higher lows. So we're still lacking a bit of confirmation in the RSI as well. And technically speaking, because we didn't reach oversold territories, there is some room to the downside. And if you're looking at the 4-hour Bitcoin MACD, technically we have now confirmed a bullish crossover in this 4-hour Bitcoin MACD, but looking in the histogram within the MACD indicator, the bullish momentum to the upside is very weak at the moment. So overall, I'm still leaning slightly more bearish than bullish at the moment in the short term for Bitcoin until we can start breaking above this moving average and until we can start seeing some more bullish confluence across these price oscillators. And so based on all of that information, my short-term strategy hasn't changed since yesterday, which means as of right now, I do have an active Bitcoin short position currently open. And I initially opened that short position right up here when I sent out that tweet a few days ago, and I also covered it in my video a few days ago. And just yesterday, I did publicly announce that I took some profits on that short position right around here. And other than my short-term trading strategy, of course, I have a longer-term Bitcoin investing strategy, which is simply to hold Bitcoin for the much longer term. And I don't plan on selling that Bitcoin for many years to come. And by the way, I'm now using some of those profits from my short position to continue to dollar cost average into Bitcoin for the long term. And now getting into the Ethereum part of this video, this right here is the 12-hour Ethereum chart. And right now we're still technically seeing that bearish divergence, which is still active and in play. And considering what happened last time around March, April, obviously this is not really a good sign for Ethereum. But like I also said for the 12-hour Bitcoin chart earlier in the video, this chart right here hasn't really changed over the past few days. So if you're new to the channel and you want more information about what this means for Ethereum moving forward, check out my last couple of videos on the channel. And the same can be said about this 12-hour Ethereum chart, because technically we're still seeing that rising wedge pattern, which we haven't currently seen a break to the downside, at least just yet. But we need to keep an eye on this uptrending line of support, which is currently coming into play just below 1600, more specifically at around 1590. And basically, like I said yesterday, if we see a confirmed break below that level of support with something like a daily candle close or potentially retesting that level to flip it into new resistance, those will be some of the confirmation methods that I would be looking out for. And in that scenario, if we see a confirmed break below this level, then immediately we could have some support at around 1500, but below that, I'll be looking down towards around 1350 to 1360, which is where the 38.2% Fibonacci level is coming into play. And that is also coming into play at pretty much the exact same price as this previous low. So that level of support has already been tested once as support at around 1360 once again. And so if Ethereum confirms a breakdown here from this rising wedge pattern and below this first Fibonacci level just above 1500, then it would become very likely for Ethereum to potentially revisit this previous low at around 1360. And in that bearish scenario, if Ethereum also breaks below that 1360 level of support, then I would start looking at the technical price targets for this rising wedge pattern, which I covered in my last video on the channel. So if you're new to the channel, check out my last video that I posted yesterday if you want to know the technical price targets for this pattern right here. But now zooming into the shorter term, taking a look at the 4-hour Ethereum chart, and right now at the time of recording this video, Ethereum is currently experiencing a bit of a short-term rejection from that 5-day simple moving average, which is currently coming into play at around 1670. So that's our short-term level of resistance that I'm currently paying attention to. And as for our short-term level of support, we do have some initial supports coming into play at around 1550 to 1560. Now, if you're looking at the 4-hour price oscillators for Ethereum, first of all, starting off in the 4-hour Ethereum RSI, unlike Bitcoin, the 4-hour Ethereum RSI has actually formed a couple higher lows and higher highs already, which is technically more of a bullish signal than a bearish signal in the short term. But like I said earlier, we need to be looking out for bullish confluence across multiple indicators in order to be more confident in a bullish movement to the upside, which means if we only see 1 or 2 bullish signals, but we see multiple other bearish signals, such as a bearish divergence or a rejection from a moving average, then that would obviously give us more bearish confluence. So personally, I'd be more confident in a shorter term movement back to the upside if Ethereum can reclaim around 1670 and more importantly around 1700. If Ethereum can reclaim 1700 with a confirmed break back above it, and more importantly, if we can hold it as support, then in that case, I'll become more confident in a short-term move back to the upside. And if you're looking at the 4-hour Ethereum MACD, technically speaking, within the last few hours, we did actually see a bullish cross in this indicator, but keep in mind, we have very low bullish momentum if you're looking at the histogram within this indicator. And we did actually see something very similar to this in the 4-hour Ethereum MACD right around here, around 10 days ago, because we technically saw a bullish crossover in the MACD indicator, but the bullish momentum was extremely low. The histogram barely moved further to the upside, and pretty quickly within the next 12 hours or so, we saw another bearish crossover in this indicator on this time frame. So once again, in order to have more confidence in this bullish cross in the 4-hour Ethereum MACD, I'd like to see more bullish momentum coming into play with a further increase in the histogram within the MACD indicator like this, for example. And so due to that, once again, my short-term trading strategy hasn't changed since yesterday. And if you want to know how to maximize your profits in crypto, whether or not the price is going up, down, or chopping around sideways, check out these videos popping up right here on your screen. The video in the top left shows you how to make money in crypto if the price is either going up or down, and the video in the bottom left shows you how to make money in crypto if the price is chopping around sideways. But anyway, that is everything that I have to say for today. I really hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you all in the next video.